It was an unusually quiet evening in the small suburban neighborhood. The golden hues of the setting sun cast long shadows over the houses, and most of the residents were settling in for the night. But at David's house, something wasn't right. His German shepherd, Max, had been barking non-stop at the abandoned house next door. At first, David assumed Max was just acting up. Maybe he had seen a stray cat or sensed a raccoon inside. But as the barking grew more intense, almost desperate, David knew something was seriously wrong. Why was Max so fixated on that old house? And why did his barks sound more like warnings than simple alerts? What happened next would shake the entire neighborhood to its core. Max was known for being a smart and well-trained dog. He never barked without reason, and he wasn't the type to overreact to small animals. But tonight, something about his behavior felt different, urgent, almost panicked. David tried to calm him down, offering treats and petting his head, but Max wouldn't budge. His eyes were locked onto the abandoned house, his ears perked up, his body tense. It was almost as if he was waiting for something, or someone. The house had been empty for years. No one in the neighborhood paid much attention to it anymore. Some believed it was haunted, while others just assumed it was another forgotten property. But tonight, it didn't feel empty at all. Finally, David decided to take Max over and investigate. If there was a wild animal inside, he would scare it away and put Max's worries to rest. But deep down, he had a feeling this was about something much bigger. David walked over to the house, Max pulling on the leash with force. As they reached the front porch, Max immediately ran to the door and started scratching it furiously. His barking grew louder, more aggressive. David knocked on the door hesitantly. Silence. He knocked again, harder this time. Still, no response. That's when he noticed something eerie. The door was slightly ajar. It had been left unlocked. A cold chill ran down his spine. If no one lived here, why would the door be open? And more importantly, was someone inside? The commotion had caught the attention of some of the neighbors. One by one, they stepped out of their houses, curious about what was happening. Mrs. Thompson, the elderly woman from across the street, wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders and frowned. That house has been empty for years, she murmured. Nobody should be inside. Jake, the burly man from 2 doors down, stepped forward. Want me to go in with you? He asked David. Just in case. David nodded. Whatever was happening, it was better to have backup. With Jake beside him and Max still growling at the door, David hesitated for only a moment before pushing it open completely. The interior was pitch black, the air thick with dust and neglect. The wooden floor creaked under their weight as they stepped inside. Max suddenly froze. His entire body stiffened, and his growls turned into low, guttural rumbles. His nose flared as if catching a scent that made his fur bristle. Then, from deep inside the house, a faint noise echoed through the darkness. A whimper. David's heart pounded. Was that a child? David and Jake moved toward the sound, Max leading the way. The whimpering grew louder as they approached a small, locked door under the staircase. Max started scratching at it wildly, barking again, his tail stiff, his body trembling with urgency. Jake didn't hesitate. He rammed his shoulder against the door. Once, twice, until finally, the old wood gave way. As the door swung open, everyone gasped. There, inside the cramped, dark space, was a little girl, no older than 7. Her clothes were torn, her face streaked with dried tears. She looked up at them with wide, terrified eyes. David dropped to his knees. Hey, sweetheart, he whispered, his voice gentle. You're safe now. The girl, too weak to speak, simply reached out and clung to Max as if he were her only hope. Within minutes, the police were called. The girl, whose name was Emily, had been missing for over 2 days. She had been kidnapped and kept hidden in the abandoned house by a stranger who had fled when Max started barking earlier that evening. Max had sensed something no one else had. His unwavering loyalty and instincts had saved a life. As the ambulance took Emily to safety, David knelt beside Max, stroking his fur. "You're a hero, buddy," he whispered. "You saved her." Max wagged his tail, his eyes filled with warmth. He had done his job. The neighborhood was shaken but grateful. Max became a local hero, his story spreading far and wide. Emily's parents couldn't thank David and Max enough. "If it weren't for your dog," her mother sobbed, "we might never have found her in time." David only smiled and looked down at Max. "He's more than a dog," he said. "He's family." That night, as Max lay curled up at David's feet, his eyes slowly drifting shut, one thing was clear: he had saved a life. And he would do it again, without hesitation. Because that's what heroes do.